Before I get into tracking accurately, I want to talk about why it's important. And this is because what gets measured gets managed. So your tracking is your data of your calories in, and we know that you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. So if we know exactly how many calories you're eating and you're not losing weight, then we know how to adjust the plan moving forward. So you're tracking just like your body weight, just like your steps, it is all data. So I want you to remember that whether or not you track the food that you ate, those calories are still going to count. So ask yourself, why not just take ownership of this? Why not be empowered and put yourself in the driver's seat? And whether or not that pushed you over calories for the day, at least you know exactly how many calories your intake was for that week, right? So then you can understand how that's affecting your results and also how it affects your body. I really think that tracking puts you in control and it allows you to become more in tune with your body. Tracking is mindful eating. I also want to be very clear that under-reporting when you're tracking, it's super common. Everybody does it, I've done it, and it's actually more common in women. So the less mindful you have been in the past of your eating, the more likely it is that you are going to under-report. And this is just based on the fact that it's a lot easier for you to forget about like those bites, licks, and tastes that really add up throughout the day. So inaccurate tracking isn't really an honesty thing, it is actually an awareness thing, and lots of it can come down to just forgetting these things. All right, so speaking of those BLTs, I want you to pause this and look through all of these, see if, oh yeah, those are some things that I might be missing. A big one is usually your milk or your sugar in your coffee. Say you had a bowl of nuts out and every once in a while you just grab a few as you walked by. Those are very calorically dense, so just 3 Brazil nuts is 100 calories. Here, if you have a Cheez-It cracker, you grab a French fry out of your kid's lunch, and throughout the day, just these single items get missed. At the end of the day, that would be almost 400 calories, which if you are in a 500 calorie deficit, pretty much wiped out your entire deficit for that day. So are you tracking accurately? And that includes drinks as well. Maybe you go out for drinks and you think, I'm not drinking tonight, I want to make sure that I stay in my calories, but then you have a few sips of beer here and there or a sip of pop. Well, all of this stuff will still add up as well. So even tracking all of this little stuff if you have it. All right, so here are some of the common mistakes that you might be making. Measuring with cups and tablespoons instead of weighing on a scale in grams or ounces. Right? So we don't want to be eyeballing things. It also saves a lot of cleanup to just put it on the scale, zero it out, and enter the food or throw the food on the scale. And then weighing solid foods in milliliters. So some random entries will have, 10 tablespoons of chicken, and it's like, that's not possible. So milliliters, it's a way to measure liquid and volume. So you can't do that with solid foods. Also, make sure you are always scanning the barcode when possible instead of choosing generic entries. And then make sure that instead of having one banana, that banana is actually weighed out in grams because this varies on size. All right, and pre-planning is a great habit to get into, very helpful, but if we don't change that plan the next day, if it's slightly different and make those adjustments, then that can also be something that wipes out our calorie deficit for that week. So make sure that if you are pre-planning, you are adjusting to exact measurements. Logging after you have ate things. So this one's really common. I wrote it all down on a piece of paper. I'll put it in at the end of the day. Well, you might be more likely to miss things on your piece of paper, and it's just better to get into the habit of in MyFitnessPal before in your mouth so that these little BLTs don't get missed. And this is just a habit that you start working on now. Tracking during the week, but not on the weekends. Very common because on the weekends is usually when we tend to eat out. So I often hear, well, I didn't know, so I didn't track it. Talk to me about tracking meals out. We can definitely get our best guess, and if anything, overestimate those. So worst case scenario, we're in a bit more of a calorie deficit that week. All right, and then forgetting the BLTs we already talked about in detail, and not tracking honestly, we also talked about. So just remember, I'm not judging your entries. I eat all of those foods as well. And on the other side, honest mistakes too, like actually just forgetting the sauce that you put on there, the extra oil that might have been in there when you didn't cook it, or again, intentionally thinking, well, this one Cheez-It is not going to make a big difference, but that over time does add up. Choosing different brands. So you can have one brand of a food item have different calories than another brand. So again, always scanning when possible. And then when you scan, it's going to usually pop up as one serving of that item. So if you had more or less than that, then make sure you make those adjustments rather than scanning and then being done with it. Make sure you change that to actual grams. And then another one that's really common is just choosing the first entry you see. So if you don't have a barcode scanner and you are trying to find the calories in steak and you're getting a list of so many different options. Well, first off, don't forget you can always ask me and I'm happy to help you. But second off, look at what's most common. What are the actual averages of this coming up? Don't just choose the lowest one. Choose one that is likely going to be correct, and you can double check this looking up on Google. USDA is approved calorie amounts, so that's a good site to check. And then we already talked about underestimating those meals out. We want to make sure that we are overestimating them, if anything, and then not checking if the entry is raw or dry, if it's rice or pasta, versus cooked. So let's talk about this one more. Basically, if you have 100 grams of a raw chicken breast, that's going to be about 115 calories. Now, you have 100 grams of cooked chicken breast, that's going to be 165 calories, okay? Because you've lost water when you were cooking it, so there is more chicken in that 100 grams. And then it's actually the opposite for foods like pasta, rice, and beans, where you absorb water when you're cooking it. So you have extra weight afterwards that doesn't actually have any calories in it. So make sure that you are tracking it as you are, like if you are weighing it cooked, you need to find an entry that states that it's cooked. Most of my MyFitnessPal entries will be raw. If you see a meat and it doesn't say cooked, it's most likely raw, but always good to double check these things. And over time, they'll save in your history. So this will become easier too. If they're foods that you eat often, and then you know you've already looked up the correct entry once, that will save and you can use that in the future. Here's just another visual of what we talked about. As you can see, that larger egg and that larger banana has almost twice the amount of calories as the smaller one. Eyeballing a couple tablespoons of peanut butter can short you quite a lot of calories if you actually don't weigh that in grams. So here's a visual to hopefully help you understand that better. All right, so again, this is what A+ tracking looks like. If you're gonna take the effort to track, we wanna make sure that you are taking that extra, just small percentage to do it accurately and get the best results possible. So weighing everything, using MyFitnessPal as a planning tool, remembering that imperfect tracking is better than not tracking at all. And actually, if you're hitting your calories consistently every single day, I might wonder, why? What in your life is making this so easy? Because there's going to be days that don't go to plan, or your entries are always rounded up to the zero. I want you to have it, if it was 67 grams, put it as 67 grams. And then also double check that the macros and the calories that are coming up in MyFitnessPal match the nutrition label on the food that you're eating. And then the recipe function is a super helpful tool in MyFitnessPal. So if you are making a recipe, do it this way. So you're going to go to add food, click recipes, the plus sign, and create your recipe. It'll bring up an option to enter all the ingredients manually, separately. You're going to add them all and then title that recipe chili or whatever it was, right? Now your servings are going to equal the grams of this entire recipe in the end. So you're going to minus the weight of the pot, and whatever that chili gives you, let's say 2,000 grams, that's going to be 2,000 servings. So when you pour out a bowl next time and it's 250 grams, then you know you have 250 servings. So use servings in place of grams, and that makes this one super easy.